Lathril is a mega popular commander for a reason. Elves are a popular tribe, sure, but the tribal nature of the deck build subtly adds something that may otherwise go missed. Your ramp package is actually ingrained into the creature archetype itself, and you already know what I mean. Llanowar Elves, Elvish Mystic, and the numerous other mana dorks that comprise a majority of your ramp options in that deck. Moreover, if you go to the EDH rec page for Lathril, you're going to see a surplus of this type of ramp, that being one-costed mana dorks. Just look at this page, it's full of them. And most of them are the top cards included in the majority of decks for Lathril. This means that a new player can go to EDH rec, pull this general list of cards up, and actually have a pretty good time. But looking at another EDH rec page tells a completely different story. Let's look at Ivy, Gleeful Spell Thief. Now, Ivy is a prime candidate for including things like the aforementioned Llanowar Elves, but higher up on the list are cards like Rampant Growth, Cultivate, Kodama's Reach, etc. Why are these even here? Ivy wants you to target another creature. Wouldn't it be nice to have extra creatures to target that also just so happen to ramp you? Moreover, in the case of Ivy, she's only 2 mana, so having the 3 mana ramp option is not only overcosted for the purposes of the deck, but there are so many other things that you should be doing instead of casting a Cultivate on turn 2 or 3 in an Ivy deck. For example, let's say that you play a Breeding Pool out on turn 1, you cast your Llanowar Elves. Turn 2, you can play out Ivy, hit your land drop, and also cast a targeting spell in the appropriate 1 CMC spot. Not only is your game plan going faster, but the little elf is what enabled all of this to happen in the first place. So I ask again, why are the likes of Cultivate showing up in 45% of eligible decks? This is simply criminal. And this isn't just a problem with Ivy. Look at literally any commander with green, and you'll see Cultivate rearing its ugly head all over the place. Chatterfang? Yep, 56% of eligible decks. Animar? You betcha, 38% of decks when Elvish Mystic is only at 32%. Pantlaza? Why not? 76%. 76. Or in the case of Atarka, 87% of eligible decks. Do I even need to say it? Now, I chose these commanders for a reason. First, they're all reasonably popular, and in fact, some of them are the most popular commanders of all time. And second, these are creature-focused decks where you directly benefit from having increased numbers of creatures and payoffs, such as your Beast Whisperer, Guardian Project, etc. But I do think it's important, and I at least want to try to defend Cultivate for a second. First off, it's an extremely cheap option for ramp and green. If you like owning the cards that you play with, 30 to 50 cents gets you a Cultivate, and likely you already have them anyway. And for years, Cultivate has been printed in the Commander products, which has probably aided to its popularity, but it means that you are likely to have the card in your collection, further supporting the low financial barrier to get this card. Second, and arguably probably the better use case scenario for a Cultivate, is for heavier costed commanders, like 6 CMC or higher, in 3 or more colors. You can get 2 different colored basic lands to fix your mana, and that can go a long way to ensure that you're playing key cards on time, especially your commander. But if you're in a 2-color deck, even in a landfall version of a deck, I don't really see a need to play it. Sure, you get the additional synergy of the landfall, but you'll be disappointed time and time again, as I have been. I would much rather have an extra fetch land to double my land drop, or a lower costed ramp option in place of the Cultivate, which we're about to talk about next. Now, if you had to run a sorcery spell that fetches you lands from your deck, I will pretty much always choose a Nature's Lore, Farseek, or 3 Visits. These cards have utility like no other ramp option in the slot, especially as Wizards continues to print better fetch options like the Surveil lands. You guys should really play these, they're insane. And you can bet that these ramp options will stand the test of time much better than something like a Cultivate or Kodama's Reach. You get a land right to the battlefield, oftentimes with 2, or in some cases 3 land types, and oftentimes with upside if you play something like the aforementioned Surveil lands in your 2 or more colored decks. The other benefit here is that many people are still using 2 CMC mana rocks, so getting off the ground a turn late with something like a Cultivate is oftentimes more backbreaking than it might otherwise sound. Your opponent gets access to 4 mana on turn 3, maybe deploying their very important commander, and now you might be stuck with the decision to be mana efficient, which means getting your game plan rolling, or removing their commander, being inefficient on the mana and potentially putting yourself behind the remainder of the table. Now, this exact situation has happened to me numerous times when I was first learning the game, and it's a really really crappy situation to be in. This is also the strategic advantage to playing a mana dork over Cultivate. You're getting ramped out so much earlier and can represent higher amounts of effective mana at much earlier stages of the game. Now, we're about to get back to the dorks, but first, we have to address a key reason why the current landscape is the way it is. You've seen now just how prolific the likes of Cultivate are in EDH and I also hope you've seen that there is a use case for Cultivate, but ultimately you should probably be a bit more discerning with your ramp options. The Zeitgeist here is this. Cultivate has been recommended so heavily by creators for literal years, shown multiple times on the biggest shows, printed into oblivion with all the commander products, and then peddled by word of mouth as a safe and effective ramp option in any green deck. To put it short, it's a staple. It's worked its way into far too many decks without the builder giving any second thought to a reasonable alternative. If everyone says it's good, then the card obviously is good, right? And if you had asked me 10 years ago when the EDH meta consisted of just hitting your friends with big creatures, Cultivate would be much higher in the ranking. But we've sped up, and the cost to value ratio continues to shift downward, and it means we need to turn our gaze back to the little guys, the mana dorks. And I want to paint something in your mind's eye for a moment. On the board state, it's turn 2. You have a Llanowar Elves, and you just played a 3-mana enchantment. Maybe it's Garruk's Uprising. You're a turn ahead, you have a key draw piece set up in your deck, and overall you're looking quite good. Your opponent, who went ahead of you, they went first, is going into their turn 3. They played a Mana Rock last turn, and now they play their 4 CMC commander, Kaalia. Now, we've all seen the hopeful 3-turn Kaalia, or turn 3 Kaalia, at least most of us have. And what's more likely to get punished in this circumstance? You, for setting up and getting ready to explode out the gate with more effective mana and draw, or the Kaalia player who has an unknown spooky hand. Every single time it's Kaalia. Every single time. Unless you're in the upside down, in which case your friend wouldn't be playing Kaalia and their Miss Bumbleflower would be poised to eradicate the table in a totally different way. But many people levy an unfair criticism against mana dorks that they can be destroyed more easily than things like lands, artifacts, and enchantments, which in turn dissuades more people from playing them. It sure pushed me away from trying them out sooner in decks other than Lathril. And although it is true statistically that they'll get destroyed more easily, the odds of them getting single targeted removed is low, which means your main concern really is more of a board wipe. But how many board wipes do people generally play? In my experience, far less than they otherwise should be, and probably are going to continue to play even though we're having a metagame shift in that direction. And if you're finding yourself in a situation with mana dorks on the board with a board wipe occurring, it's likely because you are the problem at the table. Again, getting so much mana at early stages of the game allow you to comfortably get into the driver's seat. A great example is my new Cleopatra deck. 6 low-to-the-ground mana dorks plus my synergistic artifact suite ensures that most games, if you mulligan correctly, you'll have some turn 1 to 2 ramp option available to you. It gets you out of the gate quickly, establishing 4 mana threats on turn 3. Routinely, this deck is the threat at the table, and oftentimes, with the built-in protection that it has, can get you over the finish line for a win. It allows you to snowball. Moreover, these mana dorks aren't dead in the hand at a later stage in the game. Enter the likes of Guardian Project, Beast Whisper, Yawgmoth, Braids, Skullclamp, or any of the alternatives that are just as good, such as Augur of Autumn, Eladamri, Surek and Goreclaw, Toski, Vraska joins up, or Rise of the Witch King. Either my little guys ramp me out early, they draw me late, they can be played off the top easily with these other sorts of effects, given haste to immediately use their mana, effectively making them free to play that turn, used in combat to draw cards, given death touch counters to become good blockers, or used as sacrifice fodder when I no longer need them. It really is in all parts of the Buffalo type of approach here. What I'm getting at with this example is that in a creature-focused deck, it simply just makes sense to run all the applicable mana dorks that you otherwise can or should. What type of synergy would Cultivate give me in my Cleopatra deck? Really, it's nothing. In fact, it probably just would put me behind due to my plethora of 3 and 4 drops that I would prefer to play. Moreover, top decking Cultivate at a late stage of the game is basically a dead draw, and as mentioned, the mana dorks are not. I actually like top decking a mana dork late game. It often allows me to see more cards through the various methods that I've already mentioned above, and sometimes I even feel like the mana dork is quote-unquote just what I needed. And every time that sensation occurs, it further validates that it was correct to not include Cultivate in my list. The little elves really are that good. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention power creep making mana dorks even better. Now, Bop is an insane card. It's flying, produces mana of any color, and it's all for 1 mana. What's not to like? But with the advent of Lord of the Rings, we were gifted the Delighted Halfling, the first 1-mana dork that we've received in quite a long time. 1 mana in this case gets you a steady mana producer with a bop on steroids for playing legendary creatures. This card is really insane, and we're likely not going to see many more mana dorks printed, but that's because they are incredibly strong. Delighted Halfling shows up in tons of different formats: Modern, Legacy, Historic, Alchemy, and of course Commander primarily, just to list a few. And I know much of this discussion has been about the green side of things, but the same thinking extends to other colors. Let's look at Ragavan. Literally a format warping card and an absolute powerhouse in Commander. This is essentially a mana dork with huge upside, and the price for this little guy demonstrates just how brutally effective it is. And speaking of other colors, let's look at some of my favorite color combos. Selesnya. Green-white is a popular combo for token themes. Enter the likes of Kadira Caller the Small, Risk the Redeemed, and of course various others. And because we have a focus on these small tokens, Wizards has printed plenty of support for that low stat line. Welcoming Vampire, Mentor of the Meek, Takasia's Welcome, and the list goes on. Of course, the real payoffs happen with cards like Benny Brax, Idol of Oblivion, and others that draw when a token is made. But these are even more versions of incidental value just for playing a low-power creature-based ramp package. It blows me away when I see people playing Cultivate effects in a Kadira deck when you have cards like Welcoming Vampire in your list. Just swap out 6 to 7 for the Llanowar Elf type effects, and you'll have a much better play experience. Obviously, the mana dork doesn't fit into every build, and sometimes, yeah, a Cultivate is exactly what you need. But I hope that this video gave you something different to think about the next time you're building your deck. If you have a heavy creature focus, low to the ground commander, ways to take advantage of the low stat lines, or perhaps are undecided regarding what type of ramp is best, then I would highly consider these little guys. Very few cards actually stand the test of time, and with the crazy modern day release schedule, we'll be tempted with distraction left and right. New shiny toys to try out, bigger, flashier spells, power creep encroaching on the old world that we once knew. But the mana dork has obviously stood this test of time, and I hope I've convinced you to give it a try. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out this video. It would mean the world to me if you subscribe to the channel and joined this ever-growing community. I would share the video with a friend if you think you found it helpful, and be sure, of course, to check out my Patreon. Your direct support there results in more videos like this one, paying my editor, of course, and supporting the production of our new gameplay series with so much more to come, including interviews with other higher members in the community. We just revamped the offerings of my Patreon, so if you go over there now, you'll see that there are various behind-the-scenes videos of me interviewing my friends after the games, and there's also plenty of more behind the scenes footage to come, including special rewards. For those that subscribe at the $25 tier, you'll get access to one of our playmats immediately. I will just send it to you no matter where you are in the world. So if you're interested in seeing any of those, go ahead and check out my Patreon. I'm super excited to see where the channel takes us, and I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone in the next video that I post. So I'll see you guys there. Don't forget to love each other, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.